Got recording started.
Looks like we've got about 20 people now.
Okay, I'll kick it off then.
Okay.
Great. So thank you everybody for joining. My name is Brad Tukey. I'm the Channel Relationship Executive for Miller Knoll here in New York. And I am the day-to-day contact, similar to what in Knoll land you referred to as the dealer brand manager. For your dealership, I've been working with Creative Ops Pavilion for the past 3 years as what in Herman Miller land we called territory manager, which is very similar to a dealer brand manager. And now I've been rebranded as the Channel Relationship Executive. But just know that for day-to-day needs and things, I can help you out in any way you need information around anything Miller Knoll. I'm first point of contact for all of you. Looking forward to getting formally introduced and in person. I talked to Rob Tenelia, and I believe like probably maybe in sometime in April, once you guys have formalized your org structure. I'll be making the rounds, coming to the different offices, and I want to make sure I meet all of you. But in the meantime, feel free to reach out any questions you have around Miller Knoll. And so today, what we wanted to do is give you introduction to accessing and navigating the Herman Miller contract system. And we'll also be joined here, and the training will be led by Jeff Ball, contract specialist in Michigan, and also Wendy Bazinski, our contract manager, who are very, very helpful folks who I rely on all the time to make sure that we get you the discounting that you need at the dealership level. So please, if you join, if you can mute your microphone, we're going to use chat to ask questions because there's a lot of folks on the call. And then if you can also log into the Omni portal, it's helpful. You can follow right along with the learning so that you're not just watching what you're doing. So with that, I will turn it over to Jeff and to Wendy, and I'll stop sharing mine.
Thanks, Brad, and welcome everybody. I wanted to give a little bit of context before we start navigating the system, because the way Knoll products have been priced in the past is different than the process that we used at Legacy Herman Miller. So what we're going to take you through today is the system that houses all the pricings for either projects or what we call MSAs, master agreements for customers. When the way the Knoll system worked was that your Knoll rep always managed the discount process. And the way Herman Miller works is that the dealer actually enters the pricing request into the system that we're going to show you today. It goes through a few steps before it gets approved. And then Jeff is going to go through what the statuses are so that you can see it, and you'll be able to have visibility to this the whole time. And then you're going to go into the system once it's approved to see what it was. So that Knoll system, the sales rep would enter what they call the KPR. It would go through that process, and you would get an email that you would keep that had the KPR on there. So we don't do that in our system. You actually would go into the system to see what your pricing is. So I just wanted to kind of lay that groundwork that there is a difference between the way the Knoll system worked and the way the Herman Miller system is going to work. We are also in the process of adding a Knoll pricing request into the same system. So hopefully in the next couple of months, you're going to be utilizing this system both for Knoll pricing and for Herman Miller pricing. So with that, do you have any questions on that before Jeff starts to show you how to navigate, how to get into the system and navigate through the system? Nope, we're good. All right. Okay. So Jeff, the ball is in your court.
I'm going to turn off my camera and share my screen here. And can you see my Main Street page there?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is open a web browser here. I'm actually using Google Chrome. You can use Internet Explorer. So open your internet browser and type omni.hermanmiller.com.
And Jeff had included that, or Brad had included that web link in the agenda that was attached to this meeting. So you all have that.
Right. So we have to, you type it up here in your browser, hit enter, and you want to go over to click on order and care. And then underneath order and customer care, you click on contracts.
And just a helpful hint, once you get to this spot, after you sign in, you want to bookmark this spot so that you can easily just go up to your favorites and go directly to the page.
So I'm logging in with my LAN ID and password. And here I am at the default contract screen.
And I'm going to interject just because
Yeah,
it,
sure.
it gets confusing sometimes. We call every pricing in this system a contract. In reality, it's a pricing. There are some pricings in here that have written agreements with them, and there are many, many, many that don't. They just have negotiated discounts. But we'll be asking you, if you call and have questions, what your contract number is. And in reality, that's just your pricing request number. So don't get confused that just because we say contract, that there's necessarily a written agreement with that.
Thanks, Wendy. Before I really start navigating the contract system here, this is kind of hard to see, but there is a help link here. And there are a number of topics. These are like self-help topics. Here's some instructions on how to log onto Omni contracts, how to search for a specific contract in Omni, where to find important information on a contract. There's also creating a new, brand new pricing request that's non-federal government, and the change request process. There's a bunch of different topics here. I won't go into them. It's merely to let you know that there are some resources out here. Another one, which is some of the contract system terminology. Explains contracts number, our different statuses that we use. So really just for informational purposes to let you know that those things are out there. This is,
And yeah, and that help button doesn't look like, it looks like a title rather than a hot button. Do you see? Because it has a bullet point underneath it. But in reality, what you want to do is click right on that help button, right on
Right.
that help word, and that's what he just went to.
And I do think that probably in June that they're going to make that stand out more.
Okay, thank God, thank goodness.
Yeah. So for demonstration purposes, I'm actually going to switch over to our test system so I don't mess anything up. So first thing I'm going to do is try to find a contract, and we can find it by name or number. I actually like using the contract name or the number best, just because it's more specific. If you have a name, sometimes the spelling of it might not be exactly what you think. It could be an acronym. So that makes the search a little more difficult. So I think I prefer a contract number, and I'm going to look up ANR 482. And this is our Omnia Partners contract. To open it, actually notice over to the left-hand side, there's different statuses. Active status is the contract that you can place orders against. declined, archived. These you can't place orders on. So this is the important one that I want to look for. And in the help section, we do explain the different statuses. So to open it, I just click on that link and it brings us to our default screen. Here we have a list of tabs going across on this dark gray bar. And underneath are sub tabs. So this one defaults at the customers tab. And I kind of like to, I'm not going to hit on all of these tabs because some of them really aren't that important. But we will look at actually the contract. This is the header area here. And some of the more important things is status. As you can see, this one's active. So I know I can place orders against it.
Can I ask you a question on this, Jeff? Why doesn't it say that it's open to all authorized dealers on this?
That would be whomever set this one up. I can show you another example.
Yeah. I just think it's confusing that it doesn't say it.
Yeah. Seagate. Right here, you'll see that here's the end customer, Seagate Technology. It's open to all authorized dealers. So this contract is actually open to all Herman Miller dealers in the US. On the customers tab, markets is actually an important screen. And that defines what vertical market sales apply to. And it breaks it down into a CBC code to further define that. CBC code is, we ask for that. It's mostly for reporting purposes. I'm going to back up a little bit. I got a little off track there. We were going through the status and some of the more important things that you want to see in the header. And that's the expiration date. See, April 4th, 2022. The contract type, this is an FPA complex, which means facility purchase agreement.
And that means that there is a document associated with this pricing. There is a written agreement with the customer. And
yes,
so that'll be your indicator on whether it's just project discounting or whether it's actually a negotiated contract.
yes. And in the help area here, there is a definition for the different contract types. So that should be helpful. Moving on here, the vendor HMI is for Herman Miller. If you were reviewing a Geiger contract, the vendor would be GEI for Geiger, NEM for Nemshov, and Knoll, I think, is going to be KNL, but that won't be until June. Any questions?
Why don't you, I just want to, the bolded area, so it says contract number, so that A41343 is the contract number that you can search by. The name right next to it, that Seagate Technology, If you remember on his main screen, that is the name of this pricing. So if you spelled Seagate incorrectly, let's say you put in SEEGATE, this would not come up. That's why it's much easier to search by the number rather than the name. But that's what that is when you see that main header is the contract number. And then whenever we called that pricing is that bold name next to it. Sometimes that is the same as the customer name, most times, but sometimes we also put some other indicators in there if it's a specific project for that customer so that it's much more easily findable for you guys if you're looking for a specific project pricing on a specific project.
Right, Wendy, what you just said, I just input SEEGATE, and if I hit enter there, I don't find anything. If you want to revise your search, this is a refresh icon. So it starts it back up. Seagate, spell it correctly, or you can use, I think the best way to do it may be a partial name.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
See how when he pulled that up, it pulled everything that has the name Seagate in there. So you would
Right.
you'd have to be able to scroll through to see which one you're actually looking for. So he was on that active version. If you look on the left-hand side, that's what we were looking at.
Right. So a key to understanding all this is knowing what these different statuses mean. I've been doing this long enough that I know that archived really doesn't mean much to me if I want to place an order. Neither does deleted. Active does. That I can place an order on this specific contract. This one here is in contract manager status, and this one's actually out of Canada. So I'm really not. I think this one hasn't been edited in several years, so that's no good actually. Here's a draft that someone created recently. I'm not too concerned with that one because I can't place an order on it. So this is the one I'm going to look at.
And we're not expecting that you remember all of this at the end of this. This is a whole lot you're taking in today. So we just really want to get you familiar and have something trigger in your brain when we have more training. So don't feel like you need to be, furiously taking notes.
Yeah, that's where I think some of the help documents can help out. I did put some new ones in here, and I think that they would be beneficial. It goes into a deeper dive on how to search for a contract. So it is out there. It's not Hollywood quality. It's homemade, so it's basic, but it is actually pretty good content. CBC code here on this one. Again, that further defines the customer, that their line of business, and is mainly for reporting. The invoice type. This one happens to be, we're invoicing the dealer. The other kind is end user invoice, where we have a direct sale where we would actually be billing the customer directly. Sales region. That's defined by whomever creates the request originally, and that's based on their security profile. So I think we already touched, this is the customers markets screen.
Yep, we touched on that.
Yeah, we already touched on that one. Okay. I'm gonna open up the project screen and click on team. This is where you can find out who actually created this request, who the contract manager is, and who the sales lead is. That's your local Herman Miller sales rep. In Brad's case, he would typically be listed here.
And that's important because listing the correct sales lead, if the sales lead isn't on it, they can't view it because of our security. So when you're entering these, and we can go over more of this on Thursday, it's just important to put the correct salesperson in there so that they can help you along with it.
Absolutely. Okay. We're going to take a look at the next important screen here is in the pricing tab, and we have the discounting tab. So here's where we have all of our product lines listed alphabetically. We have product code, the tier number, the tier low value and the tier high value, an end user discount, dealer discount. This column is for list dollars of sale, basically per product line. And here is dealer margin on that product line.
Okay.
This,
Yeah.
this has a negotiable level at 500,000. Yes, Wendy.
When you did Knoll pricing in the past, Knoll did not gather what the end user discount was. Herman Miller does. So that's going to be a big change for you. In FPAs, which this one is, so if there's a written agreement, that end user price has to be adhered to. For a project price, the system's going to give you a recommended sell to the end user, but we are not dictating to you what that discount needs to be. All we're saying is, in similar situations in those markets, this seems to have been a price that would win. But if you're going to sell it at a different discount, you just need to tell us because we use that for reporting purposes. We're not tracking or judging what you're selling it at. All we're doing is gathering the information so that we can run reports on end user prices.
Thanks, Wendy. Any more questions on the discounts?
And when you use the quote tool, and I'm sure Brad is going to set up training on how to use the quote tool, the quote tool actually pulls in this contract electronically and gives you the correct discount. So those two systems are attached to each other, so you don't have to do that manually.
Okay. Was there a question that came through here? Not sure. No, I guess not. Here's the price protection tab, and if there were a price hold, it would be listed here.
And what he means by that is a list price hold.
Okay. Maybe I can look at a different contract to show you. Yes. This does have a specific price list hold on the June 7th, 2021 price list. And currently it's set out to January 1st, 2025.
And that, be sure when you're looking at these, what we call price protection, which is a price list hold, that expiration of that price hold doesn't necessarily always expire when the discounts expire. Those could be two different dates.
Mhm.
So if you're thinking that I'm quoting today, but the customer isn't going to order for another 6 weeks, let's say, and the price list hold expires before then, you're going to have to manually adjust how you quote so that it pulls the correct price list for when that order gets entered. So just pay attention. That's an important date. Paying attention to that compared to when the discounts expire.
Mhm. Okay. Terms. These are where we would list any special terms of the contract. Here is the price list hold that we just looked at. This is a Omnia Partners contract, so we set money aside in an accrual to pay Omnia. Here are the payment terms and shipping terms. Notice if I want to see any more detail, I can click on that link there, and it does show a little more detail. Some terms can have way more detail. But our payment terms are 2% 15 net 30 days. And shipping terms are FOB plant prepaid. Let's see, best price term. Is there any other examples, Wendy, that you might would be good to look at, or?
What you would see on there sometimes, if we have a negotiated agreement with a customer, they may have negotiated different payment terms. So it may say, even if it's a dealer bill, it may say net 60 days. So your system will need to keep track of that. This is a different kind of rebate, but sometimes we have incentive rebates to the end users. So let's say we're quoting task seating and a bunch of workstations, and we say we're going to give you $20,000 to combine both of those awards. Somebody needs to mute.
The few numbers in that.
There we go. So if there's a special incentive rebate to the end user, that will show up in there as well. And sometimes actually we have two different price holds on a contract or a pricing request. So we may be holding the January 2020 price list until, let's say, April of this year, and then they're going to move to the November price list of 2021 for a few months. So you're going to have to pay attention to how those price lists hold play on there. So that's just and it'll show both here and in that pricing tab.
Okay. I'm going to skip over to the comments. And I spend a lot of time when I first want to know what's going on with the contract. This is the first place that I look at. I'm looking at contracts all day long and, doing a little processing. And when they come into my queue, the first thing I'm looking at is, okay, what was the last thing that was done here? And on this one, you can see that they updated the price list back in July. I'm going to look at a different. Back at Seagate. Here, we're adding a pre-activation term, which means that we're activating this contract before the actual written agreement is signed. And this gives me a good idea of what's transpired with this contract. And you can see here, I've been, we were creating a global framework agreement for this and created a pricing matrix. And I was communicating with the contract manager to essentially finalize that document. So you can go back through these comments. You can use the arrows. They go back in time, but they can be helpful. So if you want to know the current status of a contract that you just submit, you can pull up the contract and go to the comments to see where it's at.
And it's helpful too when you're entering a pricing request initially. It's going to ask you why you're entering it, and that information will end up in the comments. So saying competitive project, while that's all well and true, it doesn't give us enough information to get any context. So the more information you can put in there to give us some kind of background on kind of what you're looking for is better.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Wendy. I find that helpful too. Actually, when you do your approvals, you're good about saying what we need. Like if you need a written agreement, an addendum, that's where I'm looking out to see, what do we need to do here? Another area that I use a lot is the attachments. And you can see here that this is where we put our signed agreements.
So this is going to be important to you because if it is a written agreement and there are negotiated terms and you as a dealer have access to this, and there are national agreements that you as a dealer will have access to, this is where you're going to go to find the written agreement. They're always attached under these attachments. So be sure you understand the agreement. So that's different than the project pricing, remember. So this is when we actually have a written agreement with the customer. This is where you're going to go find it to see what the terms and conditions are of that agreement.
So I can open that if I want to here and review it. This one happens to be 39 pages long.
And it's really good reading usually, you guys.
Yeah. Makes you feel sorry for a contract manager.
What would be the critical things, like if you actually are going, this is probably way too much information on this.
I would look for the discount matrix, because usually in that region are any kind of special terms that have to do. You don't need to go through the legalese. We've already done that. So I'm not familiar. So you'll see here, this is the discount matrix. So this is how the system's going to pull the right discount, but you'll see this is kind of outlines. They've got a global agreement, so you'll understand that there's pricing for other regions. It's just helpful when you're talking to the customer. This also has different tiers, so you'll be able to see that. And to be honest, a lot of these are different because sometimes they're written on the customer's paper, sometimes they're written on our paper. Different terms come in, but usually it's the appendices that have the juicy information for you.
And I would say as a percentage of overall contracts you're working on, this is a very small minority that have a written agreement. Most of them would be project, right?
Well, we have about 1,500 written agreements, which is a lot more than Knoll ever did. So Knoll Noel's typical process was there were dealer held agreements. So the dealer wrote an agreement with the customer. Noel didn't hold the paper. The way Herman Miller has been in the past is that the vast majority of them is Herman Miller's holding the paper and the dealer's participating in that. And the dealer may end up with an MSA of their own to manage the service portion of it. So sometimes there's two agreements with them, ours and theirs. But that is a change between Noel and Herman Miller, is that we have many, many more written agreements.
Mhm. And we do a fairly good job of keeping this information up to date. There will be instances where if you're looking for something, it may not be there. But for the most part, we do a pretty good job of maintaining it. I think we really started putting all the signed agreements in there probably 5 years ago. So anything prior to that might be sitting in one of our contract files, physical files.
And I'm just going to ask you that as you look at those, utilize those, that you're judicious with the information. It is confidential and proprietary that we share with our dealers, but we certainly don't want that information going outside of our dealer partnership. So just be careful with the information.
Yes. In the attachments, you can put PDF files in there, Word files, and Excel. But when I would mention that if you save anything here, when you save it to your computer, give it a real general name. Don't put in any funky characters like the pound sign or a dollar sign, because when it'll attach in here, but you won't be able to, it won't display when you try to view it. So just be aware of that. One of the next things that I wanted to show is the icons that we use here. This one is the audit window, and it shows you essentially the different statuses of where this contract has been and who has approved it and when. You might find that helpful. This is the compare window. It compares a request to the previous contract version.
So it's not comparing two different pricings.
Yeah.
So if I've got a pricing in the system that's active and I need to make an add or a change, so it's going to compare what was originally in the system and the change that I'm making.
Do you use that much, Wendy?
I never use it.
I don't use it at all either. So, yeah, it could be helpful, but more than likely not. Here, this is a contract summary, which basically puts all of your pricing into a PDF form that you can view.
This is very helpful if you just need to quickly view what things are.
Mm-hmm.
And that button is also on the project pricing types.
Yes. That lists the terms as well.
So this is kind of like the synopsis that Noel would send you when they would send you the PDF of the KPR. This is we don't send it out, but it is there readily available if you need it.
Yes. And it does generate in Word as well. I don't think in Word, if you're using Chrome as a browser, I've had some issues with it. So I usually just use a PDF. Let's see, I was going to look at another contract.
And you don't ever want to send those to the customers because they do show the dealer discounts.
Good point.
What about
And that's,
the XML file? That's important, right? If you're going to load that into.
you know,
different-
honestly, I don't use it. I'd never use that. But from the dealer side, I'm really not sure on that.
I've never used that either, Brad. There's a place that I go to download into an XML file. I go from the pricing tab, but I do specific things to the pricing. So
I don't find that too useful.
Maybe I was misunderstood how that was used. I thought that if you wanted to like load, you could like use that file to like load into like CAP or something. But maybe that's misunderstood.
is it like a SIF or something?
Yeah, yeah, that's possible. I think the Navigator team would know more about that. I do believe that's how they use it, but I've never seen that from a dealer perspective. Let's see. Here's our showroom contract, and I just kind of wanted to show the. Let's see. It's not there. There's an icon in here for. It's for the error checker. So when you're creating like a draft request and you're getting ready to submit it, there is an error checker, and it can, if you run that, maybe it'll be here.
It'll
Right
show up
there.
on Thursday too when we're entering a new pricing request.
Here, this one's a draft, so it's like in process, but I can run this error checker to see if there's any errors on the contract, like a date that's in the past. This will kind of tell me that.
Jeff's the error on this, obviously.
And it tells me that I'm not authorized. Right.
That button is going to be really, really helpful when we start teaching you how to actually enter a pricing request. That error button saves my life all the time because sometimes you'll do some work in there and try to submit it and it won't submit. This is going to tell you why it won't submit.
Yeah. The messages are not always clear, but it will give you an idea of what's wrong with it. And there's some other contracts. Let's see. This is our.
Okay. I wanted you to go a different way to get that. Go to just the contracts over under view, your main page.
Mm-hmm.
So when you sign in to this section, the contract system, the first contract you see there is our prime discounts. That is the same as essentials. They're not the same discounts, but that's our base pricing, right? So you don't even have to search for it. It's going to be the first one that's there. Now, I suggest that you do print this out because I keep my copy here because I refer to it all the time and I live and breathe this day in, day out. But it's just helpful as you guys are getting used to how Herman Miller prices things to see what the base pricing is. So our standard dealer or essentials is what we call prime. And a lot of orders do get entered off of prime.
Right. That covers most of the content for today. We could, if anyone has any questions or want to see anything, we can.
Well, what I would like everyone to do before Thursday is actually to get into the system. Again, the link was on that agenda that Brad sent out. I want you to bookmark that, and then I want you to go in and at least look at the prime discounts just so that we know how to. Okay, that's a good question. Thanks for the question. It was, how do we learn how to process orders? The ordering system and the contract system, although linked, are not the same systems. So you're going to have a separate training with the order entry team. Brad, I don't know if you're the one setting that up. But we aren't going to go over how to enter orders because that's not part of the pricing system. But
yeah, there's
next,
going to be a whole lot of process training. There was in our Omni News bulletin last week, there was an announcement about just in general, all of the Herman Miller process training is going to be happening. So that will be run by the different teams that handle those processes, whether it's order entry or warranty claim or, Herman Miller production system training, all of those things.
and again, these systems are linked. The order entry system will pull the pricing from the pricing system so that the discounts are correct, but you don't enter an order into this system. So again, before Thursday, sign in. Brad just posted the link again. Everybody should have sign-on credentials. If you don't, let Brad know and we'll work through that. We did some checking and you should all be able to get in, but technology being what technology is, they're going to come to the main page and just look up this prime discount. You can print it off if you go to that PDF tab and just kind of navigate through that. If nothing else, just look at it and see where everything is. And I think that will give you at least some basis of understanding, because what we're going to do on Thursday is actually show you how to enter a request yourself. So better to have been in and seen the system before we start training you on how to enter a request. Does it seem really simple, everyone?
Simple.
Yeah, I think just remember that this is a process, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And it is a change, but I think the real value in it is just, you'll start to see it even more on Thursday, is some of the automation and the discounting that we provide through the system. And because we're tracking it, we're able to provide you with discounts that we know have been successful in the market for that specific product or that specific volume that you're trying to sell it at. So that's probably the most impactful thing
Correct.
that's a result of all of this.
In the Herman Miller world, who would usually be the one to submit for contracts on this site? Would it come from the salesperson, PM, AM, or admin? That question, it comes typically from the dealer. Who at the dealer does it is dependent upon how that dealer is structured. Different dealers are structured differently. So sometimes an actual salesperson at the dealership will enter the pricing request. Sometimes it's the project manager, sometimes it's your admin support. And I've seen in other dealers, it's the designer that actually enters it. So that has to do with how you're structured. But again, it's different than the way Noel was. Remember Noel, it was the Noel sales rep that submitted this. In the Herman Miller world, it's the dealer, and whoever the dealer assigns as that person or persons that enters the pricing request. The Herman Miller sales rep can certainly assist with that, but the way we have it structured is that the dealer enters it. And then because of that, you guys have access to everything in the system and you can see what belongs to you as your dealer, right? Just by logging in. Any other questions? It's a lot, I know. Don't become overwhelmed. It'll become second nature to you. I was totally overwhelmed when I first had to learn this system. And I was in sales for a lot of years, but I did learn it. And then it will be a tool that you'll come to rely on pretty heavily. So it's worth the investment of your time, but just don't get so frustrated that you don't go in there, because it really is a good tool for you to understand and use. All right. Well, if that's it, we can sign off and I'll see all of you on Thursday at 9 o'clock.
All right, thank you, everybody. That was a pleasure so much, and thank you so much for joining. We'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Thank you.